Well. Here we are on Small Ball. Today is Tuesday, and we're back. We have not had a show since, let's see, was it? Nah, it wasn't Friday. I think it might have been Friday. Wow, long layoff, actually. I'm going to notify the world that we are, in fact, live. And as I do that, I'm going to introduce today's show. So, I don't think I need to tell you this, but World Series 2020 starts tonight. Starts at 8:11 Eastern, so this show is going to go about 30 minutes. And then, obviously I will shut it down so that we can all watch Game 1. Now, we have a lot of World Series stuff to talk about, but a lot of other stuff to talk about as well. So as I hear notify the world that we are live, beautiful. Okay. Today is, like I said, Tuesday, which means, as many of you probably know, we have a Tuesday top 10 coming at you later in the show, first one in quite some time. But I'm going to start the show today with something a little different than a Tuesday top 10. What I'm actually going to start the show with, I'm not going to start the show with that. I'm going to start the show with my predictions for the World Series because I just want to get this out of the way early to make sure that we cover it because obviously very important. So Dodgers, Rays. So my bracket, like looking back, right, my bracket was very, very good, I have to say. I got my National League side actually perfect. So I had the Dodgers as the winners. So that's familiar to me. That's what I picked. My entire National League side of the bracket was perfect all the way through. On the other side, like we said, we only missed one wild card series, and then we missed, of course, the Yankees lost to the Rays. And then the Rays did go on to beat the Astros. So really the only two things that I got wrong were A's over White Sox and then Rays over Yankees. And obviously I didn't get Rays over Astros, but I had Yankees over Astros. So, yeah, enough on that. World Series starts tonight. So, look, the Rays are a team that I am not very high on, in relation to what other people think about them, right? Led the league in strikeouts in 2020. I think worst all-around defense in baseball. So we'll talk about later in the show why they're having the kind of success that they are. But I honestly think this is going to be a quick 5-game series. Dodgers win their first World Series since 1988. Rays have never won a World Series in their franchise. So, look, Clayton Kershaw starts tonight. He'll almost certainly start, another game at least in this series. So that does not bode well for the Dodgers. We talked a lot about Clayton Kershaw last show. However, I don't think the Rays pitching has been up to speed either. So I think this is a, glass now against Kershaw. Two, similarly, very talented pitchers who haven't really performed well in their careers, respectively. So I think this is a pretty competitive matchup, and I like the Dodgers, all-around defense for sure, better than the Rays. Dodgers were fourth to last in strikeouts, the fourth fewest. So they put the ball in play. They actually led the league in home runs with having the fourth fewest strikeouts, which is remarkable. So that ratio, that balance of contact and power that we talk about, the Rays do not have that, okay? They were 17th in batting average. The Dodgers were 11th, and the Rays did strike out the most of any team in 2020. And the Dodgers bullpen has looked pretty good. They're usually not, over the last couple of years, traditionally speaking, they haven't performed well in the postseason, but I like where their bullpen is at. And I think Dave Roberts is actually doing an incredible job this year, particularly managing the pitching, the bullpen. I think it's a pitching staff that historically and currently underperforms, and he has done a really, really good job of mitigating that. And I think that he deserves a lot of credit for their success. So I'm going to go Dodgers in 5. I think the Dodgers will win tonight. I think Kershaw probably gets a no decision, but I think the Dodgers take game 1. I will say by way of a score, I will say 6-3 is my prediction. So enough on that. I'm gonna start with this again. Tuesday top 10 coming later in the show. In life and in sports, there's this thing that we call many different things. I call it a feeling, and many others call it this as well. A feeling, a gut feeling, a limb. Some people refer to it as. A lot of people refer to it as the eye test. Okay, we here on Small Ball are very familiar with the concept of seeing something and making an opinion or a judgment or an argument based on what you see, not on data, science, things of that nature. We understand that concept. And in life, there's a balance between the two. Some people, lean more heavily towards what they see and what they feel to make their decisions and their analysis. And other people refer more to science and data and things like that. So as we know, baseball has shifted to the latter completely and is very data driven. And we also know and understand that I personally here on Small Ball, I'm very critical of that. And I do not agree with those principles, for the most part, generally speaking. I am much more of a feel kind of guy. So here's what I have to say. And this is not an analytics argument. Don't worry. We're not going down that path right now. You don't have to mute your computer for the next 25 minutes. So, like I said, in life, these field-based decisions are very powerful. Okay? If you go outside in a t-shirt, okay, and it's really, really cloudy, dark clouds, you can kind of feel that breeze coming, right? No sun peeking through. But the weather report, science, says it's going to be sunny all day. Well, you're feeling in that moment, you don't have any data. It's just observation. You know that you probably, it might be a good idea to run back inside and just grab a raincoat. My point is a first of many here, but my point is that these feelings that we have them for a reason, okay? This idea that the eye test is outdated and it's not accurate, there's arguments to be made for that, but there is no argument to be made that we don't feel these things. We don't have these split-second judgments for a reason. So when I watch baseball, and I watch Mookie Betts in particular, he feels to me like the most valuable player in Major League Baseball. Okay. And data tells us otherwise. Data tells us that Michael Trout is the best player in baseball. So here's what I have to say to you people. When I watch these games, I watch a lot of Mike Trout. I watch a lot of Mookie Betts. I watch a lot of other players. I'm telling you right now that Mookie Betts is the best baseball player on the planet right now. He is the most valuable baseball player, the baseball player who adds the most win value to his or her team on the planet right now. And this judgment is predicated on feel. I watch him play. I watch others play, and he has the most impactful presence to his team. But these feelings that we have, like I said, we have for a reason. If down the road you have these feelings and you can't find a reason to support them, then maybe you data people are getting somewhere. But let's go down that road and analyze. So Mookie Betts is about to win his second MVP, perhaps. He's my pick to win World Series MVP. it will be his if the Dodgers win second World Series championship in 3 seasons on 2 different teams in 2 different leagues. Mike Trout has never won a playoff game. He is 0-3. He's made the playoffs once in 11 years. Was swept in the only 3-game series that he participated in. Now, I don't even think we need to acknowledge the fact that there are other factors. Mookie Betts has other guys on his team with talent. He had that on the Red Sox. He had that on the Dodgers. He has that, rather, on the Dodgers. And the narrative around Mike Trout for his entire career is that he doesn't have any support around him. But the only reason for this narrative is because they're not having success. So people say to themselves, Mike Trout is so good and so far and away the best player in the league that the Angels aren't having success. That must mean he doesn't have players around him. So let's rethink. Let's reboot. The Angels this season signed Anthony Rendon. When Mike Trout was first blossoming, when they first started to realize that they had something special and he could be the best player on a championship team, they went out and signed future Hall of Famer Albert Pujols to support him. Many teams, the Yankees, the Mariners, the Dodgers even, were very interested in putting in a bid for Japanese pitcher outfielder Shohei Ohtani, only to be outbid by said Angels. I can come up with a plethora of examples. The Angels have been incredibly active in the free agent market with Mike Trout on their roster in the last 11 years. They did extremely well compared to some other teams. And they also have been competitive every single season he's been there. Okay, they've never been bad. They've never been rebuilding. They've always had an opportunity to make the playoffs. Mookie Betts, on the other hand, he's 27. Okay, he's a little bit younger than Mike Trout. He already has, if the Dodgers win, this week and next, 2 World Series championships in the last 3 years. He will be the best player on each of those teams by a long shot. He was the MVP in 2018 by a landslide, and this year I think he could very well win National League MVP. When we look at these rosters, and here's the important point. This intro has been a little bit elongated. Here's really what I'm getting at. Dodgers last 4 years, what do you think of? Because every year I have said Dodgers don't look like a championship team. And every year you guys have told me they have the most talent. They're going to roll through the Nationals and the Astros and the Red Sox. Don't forget Mookie Betts beat this team in 2018. Every single year they've been missing something. I have told you guys that they have been missing quite a bit. Right-handed bats, contact, veteran presence, energy, defense, a lot more than just one piece. So when Mookie Betts comes in, my idea of the Dodgers changes. Now I see them as a contender because he is a piece that somehow fixes all of those problems. He is so incredibly valuable that he changed the culture of the second biggest market in Major League Baseball. From a choke artist, underperforming, disappointing franchise over the last, since 1988 was the last time they had postseason success of note. Okay? That's 32 years. He comes in with all of those holes that I mentioned and puts them over the top. Again, this is under the assumption that they go on to win this series. But even if they don't, he has changed this franchise just like he did the Red Sox as well. Mike Trout has been a great player in the Angels franchise. He has not done anything to change it. Now you'll say, hold on, if Mike Trout is better, according to the stats, then you can't assume that it's all Mookie Betts. Well, it's not all Mookie Betts, but here's the thing. People love in baseball to argue that it's an individualized sport. You need 28 guys, 25 generally, this year 28. People love to argue that basketball, football, depending on the position, hockey, depending on the position, are much more about one superstar player, and baseball is not. Just true. So then why do we have these feelings? What is the reason that these feelings that I have about Mookie Betts being the best player are coming true? The Dodgers organization has looked wildly different than they did last couple of years. Mookie Betts has changed this franchise so much and has had such a big impact on the players around him that they are now a championship team. The Los Angeles Dodgers last 3 years, top 5 in strikeouts each of those years. This year, 4th to last. Mookie Betts is a part of that, but there are 8 other guys in the lineup, and he has had an effect on each of those 8 guys. So much so that they have gone from a swing and miss, all or nothing offensive team to a scrappy, defensively sound, energetic. They're running. I mean, he has changed. Think about this. There's more to it than adding a right fielder. We understand this in basketball. We understand this in hockey. We understand this in football, depending on the position, that players can have an impact beyond what they can do themselves. In baseball, we never acknowledge that. I am here to tell you that Mookie Betts has changed each of the 27 players on that roster. And Mike Trout, while he's an excellent player, he's pretty quiet. I'm not saying that these are things that mean you're not a good leader, but they certainly could. He's pretty quiet. He's not very he's not a lightning rod kind of guy, right? He doesn't stir the pot. He doesn't create energy. So he's a great player with 8 other players who together make up a solid team. That can't make the playoffs. But what can make the playoffs is if that great player can make the other 27 guys better. That's what Mookie Betts has done. So I implore you, stop looking at the internet. Look at the TV. Mookie Betts is the best baseball player on the planet. That said, we have a Tuesday top 10 to get to. And here we go. Oh, I have to make sure that we are technically sound. Okay, we are. So I put out a word today. I wanted my viewers, you guys, to give me some suggestions for a Tuesday top 10. So I put that on Instagram. I put that out on the YouTube channel. I asked some folk individually that aren't on either of those platforms. And so what we're going to be doing today is a Tuesday top 10 consisting of the top 10 biggest playoff disappointments, courtesy of Zach Love in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Thank you, Mr. Love, for this excellent suggestion. Now, I couldn't figure out how to approach this at first. I liked the concept, but then I realized I can do this 2 ways. I can do the biggest disappointments according to the masses, right? What people in general thought would happen and were disappointing, and what I thought would happen and disappointed me. So what I'm going to do is the 10 biggest disappointments to the masses, right? People thought this, and it didn't quite live up to expectations. And as we go along each one, I'm going to kind of put it into a category based on how much I personally saw this coming. So I'm going to say it's either I called it, I whiffed on it, or that makes sense, right? Kind of in between. So here we go. Number 10. And this is kind of a weird, I mean, you guys are going to be like a little bit confused, but Number 10 is the Rays starting pitching. Okay. Now the Rays are in the World Series, right? So obviously, I mean, it's only number 10 because it hasn't come back to bite them yet, obviously. But the strength of this team was Glasnow, Snell, Morton, obviously. They didn't quite, I mean, in the wild card series, they were very good. In the Yankees series, Blake Snell struggled. Tyler Glasnow struggled the first game and was lights out the second game. Charlie Morton was pretty okay. And in the Astros series, their offense really bailed out some mediocre starting pitching. And their bullpen has been the story. I mean, their bullpen has been excellent. I did not really see that coming. And to be honest, the guys that they've thrown out there outside of those three guys have been pretty adequate as well. Again, it hasn't come back to bite them, but if it continues, I think they're going to struggle in this World Series. I would say it's pretty fair. I mean, I did expect, with three pitchers, one of them has, postseason experience, Charlie Morton. The other two do not. I mean, they have very limited postseason experience, but no good postseason experience. But I did expect this to be the strong point of the team, and it hasn't been. So I think the Rays pitching has to step it up if they want to win this title. Number 9 is similar. So the Dodgers also obviously have not gotten knocked out yet. So this hasn't come back to, haunt them, bite them, whatever you want to call it. But their pitching, and specifically, again, I'm going to try to be as specific in this list as I can because I don't want to just say, like, the Yankees. Like, that's boring. So Walker Buehler disappointed me immensely because I saw him as the only dependable starting pitcher on this staff between Clayton Kershaw, who is a mess in the postseason. We've talked about this. Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin, who are both rookies, and Julio Urias, who's a hybrid starter reliever who got bombed in the playoffs last year as a rookie. And Walker Buehler has had not a lot of postseason success so far. He has struggled. I don't want to say struggled necessarily, but he's been less than what we expect. And this year, I was expecting that to turn around. And his last outing in Game 6 was excellent. But until that, he was not getting the job done for the Dodgers, and that's something that they need. Their offense has bailed them out thus far, and their defense, to be honest. But they need him to be on, going forward. So I did not see this one coming. I thought he was going to bounce back and become I think he's the next big thing in the National League, but Clayton Kershaw's been the thing in the National League for about 10 years, talent-wise, and I can't call him that because he hasn't had any postseason success. So hopefully Buehler turns that around. That's number 9. Number 8, excuse me, 6 of the 8 teams to lose in the first round did not win a postseason game. They were swept 2-0. The Cubs were one of them. And, I think this is disappointing, but I didn't see the Cubs as a title contender, really. I thought they were not a dark horse, kind of like a long shot team because I don't think that they had the pitching. I don't think that, they're kind of a shell of what they once were in terms of their energy back in 2016. They don't really have that it factor that they once did. But it is disappointing because, first of all, they were given the Marlins, who obviously are better than we thought, but it was an opportunity for certainly a win in the series. Not an outstanding team, a team that they could beat, but particularly they had so much more veteran leadership, presence, whatever you want to call it, than said Marlins. And I think I was disappointed in their veteran leadership between, I don't know how much of an impact the pitchers have on the offense, but between Darvish and Hendricks and Hayward and David Ross as a manager, I think he was okay as far as his decision-making, but I didn't see any energy, and that's something that you need against a young Marlins team. So I was disappointed that, again, it's not terribly disappointing because I didn't see them going much further. I thought the Braves looked a lot stronger, but I was disappointed that they were kind of given an opportunity and they squandered it. So that's number 8. And number 7 is the Bronx Bombers. Now, these Bombers, as far as power and home runs and all that stuff, were supposed to bail out a subpar pitching staff, and they didn't. The pitching held up their end of the bargain, and the Yankees could not generate enough offense in this series against the Rays. Now, it's not terrifically disappointing because they were the underdogs in the series. I think it's significantly disappointing, though, because I think this was their only thing really standing in the way of a title. I mean, I predicted them to go on to win the World Series, and after beating a really strong Indians team, I thought that they had a good shot at doing so. But on the other hand, the Rays outplayed them, they out-defended them, they hustled them, and I was disappointed because the Yankees have built their team analytically in a way that they are depending on their boppers to out-homer their opponents and win, by means of that. And the Rays just had more energy, played better defense. I thought were coached better, surprisingly. Now people want to rip on Aaron Boone. I thought he was okay. The Game 2 thing was, I didn't think it was a big deal. But I think they were out-coached, they were out-hustled, and they were depending, and they have been for a couple of years now, on the home run to propel them offensively. And this is a good example of that not working in the postseason. I forgot to give you my, I'm just going to forget about that because, you guys don't care about that. The second wave of this list. Number 7, this one I did see coming. I will say that. The A's talent. Well, here's the thing. Speaking of analytically based teams, the A's were given an opportunity to beat an Astros team that's coming off a scandal. Everybody seemingly, underperforming. Losing Garrett Cole to free agency, losing Justin Verlander to injury. And they looked completely lost in the division series because the Astros did everything that you'd want a baseball team to do. They put the ball in play. They played pretty good defense. They were coached exceptionally well. And the A's, similarly to the Yankees, are up there trying to hit the ball as far as they possibly can. And even against a lackluster pitching staff, they were not able to do that. I mean, at least the Yankees were facing those 3 guys that we talked about. The Astros, especially given Greinke didn't really have, his on stuff, did not have a pitching staff that would necessarily shut down that kind of a team. But the A's had no run creation. Their defense was poor. They were not coached very well. And they looked like a Billy Beane run team who are now 2-13 in playoff. 2-11. No, 2-13. Yeah, 2-13 in playoff series. Billy Beane's now on his way out. I don't know if it'll change, but this A's team, I didn't account for this. I picked them to do pretty well in the offseason, I should say. But now I'm realizing that they need to change their organizational principles if they want to have postseason success. Number 6. I think we're on 6. We might not be on 6. Whatever we're on, I don't know. But the Indians, I thought if they had beaten the Yankees, were my World Series favorite. But I did pick them to lose to the Yankees. So it's not tremendously disappointing in that sense. But what is disappointing is this series played right into their strengths, which is clutch, energy, exciting games. Remember back in 2017, the Yankees lost games 1 and 2 in the division series against the Indians, blew leads in Cleveland. This whole series was in Cleveland. Obviously no fans, but this is an Indians team that wins a lot of games because they out-hustle and have more energy than their opponents. And this series played into that perfectly. Game 2 was back and forth, 10-9, 9th inning comeback for the Yankees. So I think the Indians have an advantage in that situation, and they weren't able to get it done. I don't know what number we're on because I didn't number my list very well, so I'm just going to say 4 because I have 4 left. And the White Sox offense, you'll think it's the pitching because they did blow. First of all, they blew a 1-0 series lead. They blew a 3-0 lead in Game 3, the elimination game. And this is a series that is particularly frustrating for me because it was the only wild card series that I got wrong. And you'll say, well, they blew those leads, so it must be the pitching. But the pitching was not expected to be all of that. Outside of Lucas Giolito, Dallas Keuchel was pretty good in the regular season, especially in the second half. He was excellent in the second half. But this was an offense that was supposed to carry this pitching staff. And they scored enough runs, but I'm talking more about, situational hitting. In Game 3 is a perfect example. They would score at will in the first 2 innings, put guys on base and drive them in and all that, and then they were completely dead after that. So this offense, once you go up 3-0, if you're a baseball player, you know this. You gotta take pressure off of your pitching staff. It's not easy to pitch with a small lead, so you have to keep that rolling, keep the offense going. They weren't able to do that. That's number 4. Number 3. Look, I did not expect the Reds to win this series. I did not expect them to come close. A lot of people did. I don't like them as far as their coaching. I don't like their energy. I don't like their veteran leadership. But they didn't score a run in the playoffs. So their hitting is the disappointment here at number 3 because they were given – here's why it's so disappointing, because I don't think they were a championship contender, but they were given an opportunity on a tee against an Atlanta Braves team who is exceptionally talented but has struggled mightily in the postseason with this particular roster. They were given a 0-0 game until the 8th inning in Game 1. The Braves did not score. I don't think the Braves scored in Game 2 in Game 2 until the 7th inning. They were given a beautiful opportunity, the Reds were, and their hitting was absolutely atrocious. So that is a massive disappointment because it was an opportunity on a tee to win their first playoff series in quite some time, and they completely botched it. Number 2, I said Astros-Rays was going to go Astros because the Astros struck out the fewest in the league this year, and the Rays struck out the most, and the Astros had the best fielding percentage this year, and the Rays had the worst. But it was a complete flip-flop. The Astros did not make a lot of contact, and the Rays actually did. And the Astros defense, particularly Jose Altuve, that's what's been talked about, but the defense at large was atrocious. Probably the best defensive series I've seen I would say in the last 5 years. So the Astros defense is a huge disappointment. Because again, we know they had an opportunity to win this series, win 7 games. They almost came back. And like I said, I think this is a team with much better coaching, much better contact, much better defense. I think Dusty Baker did do a good job as I expected, but the defense and the contact were completely flipped, and the Rays looked like the better team in this series. And defense is usually something that, you can control. It's something that is pretty consistent. If you're a good defender, you're pretty much going to be a good defender, in any circumstance. It's not like hitting in that sense. And the Astros, who are a good defensive team and great defensive team, looked completely lost out in the field. And number 1, and this was going to segue into a longer piece, but I am gonna stop it after this because we have baseball to watch. But Ronald Acuna Jr. let Atlanta down. They blew a 3-1 series lead, and he's supposed to be their best player. He hit 167 in this series. He hit 182 in the division series, I should say. And it's hard for me to talk about this without going in depth, but I'm going to cut it off and save it for next show. They're depending on him to be their go-to guy, their best player. But the problem is he averages 192 strikeouts per 162 games. He has had off and on good and atrocious defensive seasons. people see him as an excellent defender because he's exceptionally talented, but his defensive instincts, his outfield instincts are not at all where they need to be. And statistically this year, he did not have a good defensive season. I don't see him as a top-of-the-line defender by any means. So again, I'm going to talk in more depth later. But if Ronald Acuna Jr. has a decent series, the Braves are headed to the finals. And he did not. He let them down. Albies had a really good series. Dansby had a really good series. Freddie Freeman had an excellent series. The pitching staff, Ian Anderson, Max Fried, everybody was on. And I thought the Braves played well. I thought they were managed pretty well. Game 7, I did not like what I saw from Brian Snitker. More on that later. But I thought the Braves played well. And there's not a lot of, negative things I have to say about the way they played in this series or this playoffs at all. They were dominant. Their only missing piece was supposed to be their go-to guy, Ronald Acuna Jr., who did not show up to play. So definitely more on that next show, whenever that may be. I think it's actually going to be tomorrow, believe it or not, because I can't do Thursday. So it's either tomorrow or Friday, but I'm going to try to do it tomorrow. We'll see. You guys know how I roll. It's not – whatever. We'll see. So thanks a lot for watching. That's going to do it for today. I do want to get – we're over now, so there's game 1 to be watched.